The prairie woke in silence, its pale grass bent low under a thin wash of dawnlight. Evelyn Carter sat by the small fire, rocking her boy against her chest, though he was too old for rocking, too lean, too quiet. The cabin walls seemed to groan with the same grief she carried inside. Her husband gone to the graveyard by the hill, leaving only whispers of a man's laughter, the smell of tobacco that no longer clung to the air. Her son, Tommy, coughed weakly in the warmth of the fire, his frame small where it should have been broad. She knew what the neighbors said, that a boy without a father was no boy at all, that he would grow crooked without a man to show him how to hunt, how to hold a rifle. The words stuck to her like burrs. Shame, pity, widow. The sound of hooves broke the morning quiet, and she stiffened, clutching her son tighter. Out of the fading mist rode a figure, dark hair braided, shoulders straight though his buckskin was worn thin. A Comanche warrior, weary but proud, with a swaddled infant strapped against his chest. His eyes caught hers, not cruel, but steady, and when he spoke, his voice was even as wind against stone. "Your son needs to learn how to hunt," he said. "My daughter requires breastfeed." The words hung heavy, strange as thunder where there had been only silence. Evelyn's heart hammered, torn between fear and a pulse of recognition. Need speaking to need. She rose, her hand tightening on the doorframe as though it might shield her. "No," she whispered, her voice cracked with shame and the taste of refusal. She wanted him gone, this reminder of danger and scandal, of what the town already whispered about her. Weak, alone, unguarded. Yet she could feel the man's desperation like heat off a dying fire, the infant stirring restlessly against his chest. Still, she pulled Tommy inside, shutting the door, trembling. The gossip came swift, carried by Marjorie Kane, whose tongue never rested. They said the widow was harboring an Indian at her doorstep, that shame would rot her faster than grief. They wondered aloud if she'd lost her senses along with her husband. Evelyn felt the stares in town, the turned shoulders, the muttered words when she walked past the mercantile. Shame pressed heavier than her hunger. Nakoni did not leave. He made his camp near the edge of her homestead, never asking entrance, never raising voice. At dawn and dusk, meat would appear at her door, rabbit, once a wild turkey. He said nothing of it. At night, she would hear the infant cry across the prairie, and though she pressed her hands to her ears, the sound cut through her resolve like a blade. Hunger thinned her boy's cheeks. Loneliness gnawed at her bones. It was Tommy who first wandered toward the campfire. Evelyn found him crouched beside the warrior, watching intently as Nakoni's hands traced tracks in the dirt, showing him where a deer had stepped, how a broken twig told a story. The boy said nothing, only listened, his small fingers mimicking the warrior's gestures. Nakoni did not praise, but the boy's eyes shone as if someone had finally seen him. That night, Evelyn stood frozen as Nakoni handed her his daughter. The child's cries were sharp, desperate, and though Evelyn's body had not given milk for months, she pressed the infant to her breast. The small heartbeat against her chest slowed, softened, until sleep fell upon tiny lashes. Evelyn felt tears sting her eyes, not for shame, but for the strange warmth of being needed again. Something loosened in her chest, something that had been knotted since the grave took her husband. Days unfolded with gestures that spoke more than words. She mended a tear in his buckskin without asking. He left firewood stacked against her wall. Across the firelight, their eyes would meet in silence, not romance yet, but respect. Two weary souls standing guard over children who needed more than either could give alone. Evelyn felt her shame lessen, the whispers of town faint against the steady rhythm of survival. But the town did not forget. Sheriff Eli Hayes rode out one morning, dust rising behind him like a warning. He dismounted slow, his hand resting on his revolver, though his eyes carried more pity than malice. "Evelyn," he said, low so Tommy would not hear, "you can't raise your boy with an Indian at your door. Folks won't stand for it. You'll be cast out for good." His words hung like a sentence already passed. She wanted to plead, to explain, but all she saw was Tommy laughing. Laughing, for the first time in months, a rabbit clutched proudly in his small hands, Nakoni watching over him like a silent teacher. Dusk brought more than shadows. The sound of hooves thundered across the prairie, torches burning against the horizon. Evelyn stood in her doorway, Tommy clutching her hand, Nakoni's infant resting in her arms. The men drew close, sheriff at their front, Marjorie Kane's husband among them, anger twisting their faces. "Choose, widow," the sheriff said, his voice tight. "Your place with us, or your shame with him." Her knees trembled, but before she could speak, Tommy stepped forward. In his hands was the small bow Nakoni had shaped for him, trembling in his grip, yet steady in his gaze. "He's teaching me." The boy's voice rang, breaking through the crackle of torches. "You wouldn't." The words were simple, but they fell heavier than bullets. The men faltered, shame prickling their silence. No one moved to strike. Torches lowered. Nakoni came to stand beside her, not as threat, but as shield. The prairie wind hissed around them, carrying away the anger that had gathered. One by one, the riders turned, their shame too heavy to hold. Evelyn's breath broke in a sob. She swallowed quickly, clutching both children close. When the night settled again, quiet and vast, she turned to Nakoni. No words passed, only the shared weight of survival, the respect of one soul to another. In his presence, she saw not danger, but the chance for her boy to become a man, for her grief to turn into something resembling strength. And so it was that on the lonely prairie, a family was born of hunger, shame, and courage. I tell you this because life often places burdens at our doors that we call curses. But sometimes they are gifts dressed in sorrow, strangers carrying the fire that will warm us, the lesson that will grow our children, the grace that will steady us when we think we can stand no more. And if you remember anything, let it be this: love does not always arrive dressed as love. Sometimes it comes as need, sometimes as desperation. But if you let it in, it may yet save you.